it makes the yurt feel all that more cozy. Now all we need is a fire in the fireplace.
Yeah.
That's okay. Okay, looks like we lost a few people in the rainstorm. Anyway. Okay, we're moving on to another cheerful topic, namely fear. Would you say that Arjuna was fearful in the first chapter of Bhagavad-gita?
For his reputation?
Was he fearful?
That's killing family members.
He was fearful for the life of his friends and family, not for himself.
Right, okay. What else was he fearful of?
Bad result of the...
Bad results, bad consequences, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Family tradition would get lost.
Yes, family tradition and so many consequences. Varna sankara.
He's acting in the wrong way, that he's not good at all.
Yeah, that he's following. You could say he was feeling it was adharmic, especially because he would be fighting his gurus. Guru nahatva hi mahanugan mahanubhava. Yeah, so we could say that the Bhagavad-gita is the impulse for the speaking of Bhagavad-gita is to a large extent fear. Now fear, there's a lot more energy in fear than there is in grief and apathy, generally. Especially immediate fear, if there's some physical danger. And we know that fear is a good thing. Someone who has absolutely no sense of fear can be in great danger of being harmed because they don't have fear. They can't protect themselves. But fear is also one of the four kind of core activities of human beings that we have in common with animals, right? Ahara nidra bhayamaitunam cha samanyametat pashubir naranam dharmo hitesham adhiko vishesho dharmena hina pasubir samana. So bhaya, so eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, or the word is bhaya, which means fear, but when you're fearful, then we want to defend. So there's very strong energy there to defend, to maintain, to keep what we have, what we think we have. What is the condition? What is one characteristic of advanced devotion with regard to fear? Abhay, yes, to be fearless. But is that fearless? Is it foolish fearlessness?
Or is it taking shelter in Krishna? No, it is if we take shelter in Krishna, then it's not foolish.
Then it's not foolish if we take shelter in Krishna. Okay. What about fear of failure? That's kind of a major issue, isn't it? What's wrong with failure? Okay, we might be rejected. Say again? Thinking we are the doer, and therefore, if we fail, we are thinking it's I who failed because I'm the doer. Yeah. Yes, Thibaut.
Where we may be back to apathy.
It may put us back to apathy. Because rather than fail, better to not do anything. Right?
Takes away not like the process of attempting by itself is painful. That you have to overcome that fear of failing by attempting. And then if you then fail, then very discouraging.
You go to the trouble to overcome the fear of failure, and so you do something, and then if you actually fail, then that's discouraging. Yeah. So better not do anything. Apathy. Has anyone ever experienced fear of failure?
School.
Huh?
School.
School. Did you ever fail an exam? Uh-huh.
Distribution.
Book distribution.
You think they're not going to take?
Fear, yeah. But that's more apathy. If you think they're not going to take, then they're not going to take. But you may fear that they will reject your offer, right? You're offering, you want to give something and they're refusing it. That's a kind of failure. That could be a very strong reason, I would suggest, why it is so much encouraged as a way to advance in spiritual life. Go out and distribute books, because then you're faced repeatedly. You're faced repeatedly with failure. And that, isn't it? No, you just have success with everyone you approach. Yeah. Srila Prabhupada spoke a lot about success. If you do a search on the database, I don't know how many times, I don't remember, but I think a few thousand times Prabhupada speaks of success. He speaks of failure not so many times. It's maybe less than half. He considered, well, let me ask, would you say that Srila Prabhupada considered his mission a success?
More than unfulfilled.
But not his success.
He considered it a success, but not his success. Yes, but I think he also considered it his success. His success in following his guru, isn't it?
Yes, and I hear him say in a video, he says, if you keep chanting, if you keep practicing this method, that is my success. the faith.
Yes, if you follow this method, then that is my success. Yeah,
If you can make one pure devotee, this whole movement is successful.
Yes, he said like that. He also said, he wrote in, I don't know, the preface or the introduction to Bhagavad-gita, if one person becomes a pure devotee by reading Bhagavad-gita, this Bhagavad-gita, I will consider my effort a success. About failure, Srila Prabhupada once said, this I think is, where is it? One is considered a failure if he makes no inquiry into his real identity, which I take as an impetus for what we're doing. That part of the process of inquiry into our identity is to discuss, to reflect on the sort of things that we're talking about here. Of course, the whole process, Shravanam Kirtanam, is about that. But what I want to say, going back to the issue, the problem we discussed of sort of running up against not quite accomplishing anartha nivritti, suggests we need to work on ourselves. And we can think of that working on ourselves as inquiring about our real identity. Yeah. Something I've written here, this is an excerpt from an essay which I haven't finished. It's it needs a lot of revision. But I wrote an essay about Prabhupada's use of this word, success. So bear with me. I'll just read this paragraph and I'll explain. Self-evaluation, that's considering ourselves, can unfold as a kind of hermeneutics of suspicion. I have to explain that. Hermeneutics, everyone know what that word means?
Interpretation of Shastra?
Well, yes, very good. More broadly, it can mean interpretation, usually of literature, but it kind of grows especially out of interpretation of sacred texts. And hermeneutics of suspicion, Charlotte will know what that means. Well, he was not so much about hermeneutics of suspicion, but who's the other Frenchman? I just forgot. Starts with an R. Anyway, hermeneutics of suspicion is what Marx and Freud and Nietzsche are practicing. They're the sort of masters of the hermeneutics of suspicion. Hermeneutics of suspicion, this is going on a tangent, but it means to be suspicious about the motives of the person who has written something. And it's a kind of suspicion which is there must be a motivation of a desire to establish or maintain power. And so one reads whatever the person's written and in a sense tries to read between the lines. Yes, he says this, but what does he really mean? The opposite of the hermeneutics of suspicion, and Gadamer speaks of this, is the hermeneutics of consent. And that's basically our approach. Devotional approach to Shastra is from square one, we consent. Consent. I agree. Yeah. Consent. Consent. Yeah. I consent to what is being said. But what I'm saying here is I'm taking this idea, hermeneutics of suspicion, and sort of turning it around and saying devotees pursue a suspicion of their own practice, their own qualifications, etc., their motivations. So self-evaluation can unfold as a kind of hermeneutics of suspicion about one's own motivations, whereby accomplishments, successes in practice, such as persistence in daily observance of prescribed devotional activities, seem to pale in comparison with the ultimate success, the ultimate achievement, which is aspired for, namely pure bhakti or Krishna prema. In other words, we go day to day doing our devotional activities, and sometimes we kind of stop and go, oh, come on, this is not going to get me up there. And we might therefore feel some fear of failure. But I'll finish what I wrote. In this sense, failing well is an ongoing conscious acknowledgement of personal aspirational shortfall, accompanied by various strategies of persistence and pursuit of self-improvement. Okay, this expression, failing well, there's one scholar did his doctoral dissertation at Cambridge University, and he's an anthropologist, and he studied, guess what? The devotees in Mayapur. He spent a year in Mayapur living with devotees, going to Mangal Arti, going to programs, listening to lectures, and talking with devotees, mainly Western devotees. And one thing that emerged out of his interviews with devotees, I met him also, and he interviewed me. But one thing he kind of drew from talking with some devotees is they have a sense of failure, but it's a kind of failure that he calls failing well. Failing well, meaning, okay, I'm failing, but I'm trying. I'm trying, but I'm failing. I'm failing, but I'm trying. So it's failing well. Anyway, I just threw that in there in relation to fear. I think it's a kind of significant concern of devotees, especially in the context of Prabhupada's insistence that his movement is successful, and by practicing bhakti yoga, one will be successful, and so on. So that becomes a source of concern. I better be successful. What if I'm not successful?
Failure as a learning experience.
Yes, of course.
That's failing well. No?
That's the good side of failure. Yeah.
Maybe also a fear that.
Where's our microphone?
Maybe there's also fear that if I fail, it might mean I missed the point and what I did was in vain in some way or other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I missed the point. We say in English, I missed the boat. The boat left the dock. Yes, Prince.
Failure. If you say I'm a failure,
Yes.
that becomes the bad way of failing.
Yes, that's a good distinction. There's failing, and there's concluding I am a failure. So you fail at some particular thing. Okay, let's learn from it. It becomes an opportunity. But I am a failure. Ooh, that's a problem. And so, yes, Raman. Microphone.
Is that living with that kind of suspicion, is that not undermining, I wouldn't say any hope, but a sense of peace?
Good question. Whether that's undermining this sense of self-suspicion could be a way of undermining peace. It could be, but it could also be a way of being self-honest. And it could be a way of being non-complacent, which can then ultimately lead to peace. Yeah. Yeah, I would put it that way. Right. I should move a bit faster. This is, we're still on number 7, fear. Okay, let's move up. Desire. Yes. Now, in the Bhagavad-gita, I found 3 terms for desire. Can you think of one of them? Kama. I knew you would say that. Any others? Abhilasha. Is that in Bhagavad-gita? But it is a word for desire. Generally more spiritual desire, isn't it? Playful desire. Huh? Iccha. Yes, iccha. Iccha, but what is associated with iccha? Iccha dvesha samutena. Dvanva mohena bharata, right? It's associated with its opposite. Desire and aversion. Yeah. Another word, kanchanta, is it? Kanchanta karmanam siddhim. Longing, it has a sense of wanting perfection in one's actions. That's in, where is it, chapter 3?
Hankering?
Kanchati, yes. Na sochati, na kanchati, yes. Yes, hankering, longing, yes. Yeah. Another term, Sanskrit term associated with desire, lobha, right? What is lobha? My precious. More. Huh? Yeah, aniyor. Well, that's, yeah. Okay. Now, in this context, I find it nice to remember the story told by the sage in the 11th canto of Pingala. Remember Pingala? Pingala is hoping to meet a customer. She is a, what would you say in polite society? A lady of the night or something? Huh?
Social worker.
A social worker. A society girl, yeah. A working lady. Well, they have now the term sex worker, right? Sex worker. Okay. So she's waiting. From the time the sun goes down until midnight, she's waiting. And she's anticipating, hoping, and men are walking by and ignoring her. And at some point, she realizes, this is ridiculous. What am I doing? And then she lets go. She lets go of that desire. Evam yavasitam matir durasham kantatarshajam. Kantatarshajam. So the desire for love, or the thirst for love, born of the thirst for love. Chitva upashamam, chitvo pashamam, astaya shayam upavivesha sa. When she realized this, she became resolved, Vyavasita Mati. And Chitva, having thought this, Upashamam, she became peaceful, Shanti. And Astaya, remaining Shanti, Shayam Upavivesha. She sat down on her bed. And then she went to sleep. And she refers to herself as Mudha Di, as one who is completely foolish. And then finally she said, oh, and this is so funny. She says, I will pay the price of complete surrender, and thus purchasing the Lord's, I will enjoy with him just like Lakshmi Devi. So she transforms her desire. Srila Prabhupada would use an expression I always found interesting, dovetailing. She dovetailed her desire in service to the Lord. Yes.
May I ask a question? Well, from this particular example, this is always given to the woman, or okay, just accept Krishna as your husband. What do the men do?
They become women. Or cowherds. They become gopis or cowherds. Well, yeah. You'll have to ask other men. I don't know how to put that. Yeah, interesting question, but I think we'll have to table that for now. But the short answer would be, in spiritual terms, we understand that all jivas are prakriti, and therefore, in a sense, all jivas are female in relation to Purusha. So if you think of it in terms of like rivers, you could say Purusha is one big river, and there's another river coming into that river, which is Prakriti, and that Prakriti river has two branches. One is men, one is women. So from that perspective, it's the idea from a Sankhya perspective is recognizing our position as Prakriti. And then the dovetailing is, again, with Krishna. Yeah. Okay. Mm. Mm?
Just one. Man, we are whole female.
I missed that, sorry.
I think we are whole female.
We are all female. Sorry, all of you guys. All this time you thought you were men, but actually you're not.
Kind of disturbing to not have a choice, isn't it?
You want to be a man.
I would have a choice first.
A choice. Yes, that's what got you in this world.
That's pretty bad, isn't it? I mean, I don't want to disturb the lecture, but I think very bad about Bhagavan for this.
It's all his fault.
Well, he's making the conditions, right? And you guys are suffer or accept. He's laughing, but it's true.
Acceptance. Yes, Aravinda.
I've understood that we are all separated parts of Krishna.
Yes, that is there at the same time. Yeah. And therefore, sometimes in Bhagavad-gita, we're referred to as Purusha. And that's how it gets confusing. Purusha prakriti sto hi bhukte prakriti jangana. Okay, I want to move on. We could say so much about desire. One more thing, that the word kama itself has a spectrum of sense, of meaning. Srila Prabhupada much of the time speaks of kama as lust. More broadly, it just means desire. But it's invariably desire for something in relation to the temporal body. So it might be desire for reaching the heavenly planets, but what is that? That's a material desire. So that's kama. And therefore, the contrast is made in Chaitanya Charitamrita between kama and prema. Atmendriya priti vangsha tarivalikam krishnendriya priti iccha dhare premanam. The desire to satisfy one's own senses is kama, and the desire to please Krishna's senses is prema. In both cases, the desire to please senses is there, but there's complete difference. One is kama, one is prema. Yeah, but they're both desire. Okay, desire. Anger. Has anyone ever felt anger? No? Hmm?
Of course, yes.
Of course, yes. Has anyone felt your anger? Has anyone been the recipient of your anger? We could say there's two kinds of anger. One is righteous, one is unrighteous.
My desire is also spiritual.
Yes. Righteous anger, one way it's been explained, is it's a response to boundary violations. Response to boundary violations. One writer raises the question, can anger be wonderful? And he answers, yes, it can surface moral wrongs. And that can be wonderful.
Could you give an example?
Well, moral wrongs, when someone is, again, going back to violation of boundaries. So a moral wrong is some sort of abuse, any kind of abuse, whether it's gross or subtle. And all kinds of abuse are going on all the time, all over the world. Systemic moral wrongs, we can say, are there. If we want to talk about the meat industry that's killing 80 billion animals per year, land animals, and so on and so, is that not a moral wrong? And yet it's being presented as normal life, and so on. So this author is saying that's something to be angry about.
It's helpful to be angry about that.
Well, that goes into a whole question of strategy for change in the world, and that's a big topic. But it might be that a strategy would be undertaken on the impetus of anger, a sense of anger, of righteous anger. This is wrong. This should be stopped. This should be changed. And I would say we see that in Srila Prabhupada every time, and almost every time, whatever he spoke about Christianity, he would say why they're not following their commandment, thou shalt not kill. And he would often speak it in a tone of considerable, what I would say is a kind of righteous anger. So it can be, and it could be many forms of what they call speaking truth to power. Speaking truth to power. And coming back to, while we're on the subject of Jesus, I just recently saw the film Christspiracy. Anyone seen it? Yeah, quite powerful. And for me, the most interesting point was the claim, true or not, but it seemed very reasonable to me, the story of Jesus pushing over the money changers' tables. What was actually going on, he was protesting the animal slaughter in the temple, which was going on in utter, it was just constant animal slaughter going on. Yeah. So that was righteous anger. Yeah. There's Dhruva's story. Dhruva was, we might want to say, righteously angry, but he was feeling righteous anger about his own a crossing of his own boundary, you could say. He eventually transforms his anger and his resentment by his practice of meditation and service and chanting of mantra. But it seems with him, it doesn't go his anger doesn't go away completely, even after he meets Lord Vishnu, prays to Lord Vishnu, then later he becomes the king, and then what happens? His brother gets killed, and this makes him so angry that he wants to commit genocide against all of the yakshas, and nothing stops him until, is it Lord Brahma or Swayambhuva Manu comes and says, enough, time to stop. Yeah. Now, I'm saying these are all constellations. One aspect that could be associated with anger is irritation. Everyone's going, yeah. We can be annoyed, irritated by anything from a fly in the room to somebody speaking too loudly in the next room, to all kinds of things. One writer identifies irritation, along with a few other emotions, as ugly emotions. And one reason he refers to them as ugly is because they're often about things you can't do anything about. But envy is another ugly emotion. And envy is, you might want to think it should be on this list. It's a major concern for devotees, but we may want to include it within anger. Then there's pride, and yeah, what might we want to say about pride? Ahankara, false ego. Okay, yes. Hmm? Wrong identification. Mm-hmm. Prestige.
Borrowed plumes.
Hmm?
Borrowed plumes.
Borrowed plumes. Okay. Yes.
I think of pride sometimes as a foundation of strength. Being proud of something
Mm-hmm.
that I associate with, which prides me, it actually helps me to stick to it. So if I'm proud of being a devotee of Krishna, I'm probably not going to stop.
Yeah, and what does Srila Prabhupada say about this? Somewhere he says that the pride of a devotee is the instructions of the spiritual master. Yeah. Now, it's true, this brings strength, as you say, and therefore it can be a positive thing. In fact, Aristotle identified pride, which he called megalopsuchia, as proper pride or the greatness of soul or high-mindedness and even magnanimity. So we usually think of pride as something nasty. Aristotle didn't think so. He considered it the crown of virtues. And he distinguished it. He said it's not vanity, and it's not temperance, and it's not humility. Pride is sometimes considered the opposite of shame. And in that sense, it might also be, could be a positive thing. On the other side, there's the famous statement, pride goeth before a fall. That's the old, technically not Old English, I think it's Middle English, goeth. Pride goes before a fall. And Gaur Govinda Swami, in one of his lectures, said, pride is a demoniac characteristic. It is not Vaishnava. So there you go. Two extremes. One mantra that can go with pride is, I did it. I did it my way. But the footnote is, I did it, or I did it my way, but I'm not sure I can do it again. So there can be some underlying insecurity under this.
Was once a little sketch from the devotees, and Frank Sinatra was singing I Did It My Way, and then the Yamadutas was wrecking off the stage.
Yeah. Well, I've heard that song from Frank Sinatra was a common choice at funerals in America, to be played at someone's funeral. People want to be remembered that I did it my way. Yeah. I'm going to jump back here. I think this has to do with, yes, this has to do with anger. We mentioned something yesterday about how we may have experienced some sort of inadequacy in our parents, and this kind of carries over from generation to generation. So bear with me. I want to read a paragraph again from The Wild Edge of Sorrow. The subtitle is here, Rituals of Renewal and the Sacred Work of Grief, from Francis Weller. He says, he has a little section he calls A Brief Note on Blame. He says, having worked with people for more than 30 years in my practice, his psychological practice, it is clear to me that finding a target to blame is effortless. Nothing is asked of us when we simply assign fault to someone else for the suffering we are experiencing. Psychology has colluded in the blame game, pointing an accusing finger at our parents. While many of us suffered mightily because of unconscious parenting, we must remember that our parents were participants in a society that failed to offer them what they needed in order to become solid individuals and good parents. They needed a village around them, and so did we. Of course, we were disappointed with our parents. We expected 40 pairs of eyes greeting us in the morning, and all we got was 1 or 2 pairs looking back at us. We needed the full range of masculine and feminine expressions to surround us and grant us a knowledge of how these potencies move in the world. We needed to have many hands holding us and offering us the attention that one beleaguered human being could not possibly offer consistently. It is to our deep grief that the village did not appear. Now it's really raining. I don't know how, especially you who live here at Radhadesh and have been raising children, might think about this statement, whether you think it's applicable or precisely not applicable or what. But I find it of course, it reminds us perhaps of the expression, which I think comes from Nigeria in Africa, it takes a village to raise a child. So you might want to say, well, we have a village here. Is it working as it's supposed to? Maybe to some extent, yes, maybe no. I don't know. Maybe it'll take some more generations to decide. Now that it's raining, I'm starting to wonder what Krishna wants. Just stay here and keep going. have kirtan. Yeah, I think I will stop here. If anyone has any thoughts, comments, you might want to make a note now just on something about which you feel pride, either in a positive way or some negative way. If that's possible to reflect in such a situation where it's pouring down rain. Yeah. Yes, trying to sit. Let's get the microphone to you.
I remember a story of His Holiness Bhakti Kshetra Swami, and he said he had 7 brothers, and they were all married, and they were all living in the same house. He said, so if his parents were angry with him, then he had 6 other parents who were not angry with him. So it was a very lovely situation, he said. And you can see emotionally he is very balanced,
Yeah,
because of that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole subject, extended families and how they can be helpful, how they can keep marriages together. Yeah. They can also be stifling, from what I've heard. So many expectations. Yeah. Who's been raised in an extended family of at least 3 generations? Anybody? My grandparents lived halfway across the country that way and halfway across the country that way. And we would visit them, once every 2 years or something for 3 days. That was my connection with grandparents. And same with uncles, aunts, and cousins. I was okay, here it comes. True confession. When I was about 6 years old, visiting grandparents in Detroit, my father's older brother lived also in Detroit. He and his family, they had 2 daughters. And we were visiting. And I think I must have been around 6, maybe 5 years old. And I don't know what exactly the fear was I had, but gradually, as the day was going on, I was feeling more and more the need to go to the bathroom. But it didn't occur to me that I could say to anyone that I need to go to the bathroom. And so at one point, and that was source of great shame. I think looking back on it, it was a matter of having no trust. I couldn't even tell my mother or father, is there a bathroom here or something? Somehow in my mind, I thought, I just have to hold it. Did that happen to any of you? Am I the only? No? Yeah? In school? Yeah.
Because some boys, they were like very naughty, and then actually they had to clean it up.
Oh.
Right, Haribo.
Yeah. Anyway, the point was extended families. Mine was a very nuclear family. And I think most nowadays in the West.
Yeah, I'm just thinking how perhaps this notion of extended family can be also connected with some confidence that can come if you have more sort of adults who are there for you emotionally and so on, that can also bring some sort of confidence. I mean, personally, I did live with my grandmother. I just remembered now that that you were speaking that, yeah, we actually were sort of with my brother raised by my grandmother, but we were living in a whole big house with uncles and so on. But that brings a lot of other complexity of family relationships.
Yes.
But I'm thinking the confidence is something which is maybe, yeah, that's connected with pride in some way. And isn't it also in one of ways positive way of practicing bhakti when we have confidence, that what we're doing is going to bring us to success.
Yeah. And you could say that's repeatedly what Srila Prabhupada is trying to do, is instill confidence in us that what we're doing is the right thing and that we can be successful. Yeah. Good.
I heard a lot about the advantage of extended family.
Yeah.
And I wonder if this kind of, we can see the advantages also, the same kind of advantages can be also in a community life, or kind of a group of
Well,
individuals.
that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
And you could say it's also a question, what are the dynamics of a given community? How is it really functioning? So the Radhadesh community, how much of a community is it? In what ways is it strong? In what ways is it maybe weak? How might it be strengthened? And so on. I mentioned Mayapur, and this scholar John Fahey did this research. He spent a whole year there, apparently. There's another a devotee, Indian devotee, sociologist, who also lived in Mayapur for some time and studied in Mayapur. As a sociologist, he examined how Mayapur is functioning. And he had a very systematic, analytical, you were there for his talk, he had a very analytical, what do I want to say? It was very analytical how he analyzed Hare Krishna. And his conclusion, as I remember, was not terribly positive. He said there's so many different groups who don't really interact with each other. There's the Russians, there's the Bengalis, there's the South Indians, there's the, Westerners and so on. And they're kind of like bubbles. Yes, they're kind of together in the same place, but one devotee is starting a project of interviewing children in the schools in Mayapur. That's going to be a hot topic. They're thinking she should maybe not. It's a couple. They live there, devotees, and they're planning eventually, for various reasons, to move away from Mayapur. So they're thinking first, do the research and write it out and not publish it until they leave. Did it stop raining? Okay, I guess we can go then. I had something, but I'll save it for tomorrow.
Next time.
Huh?
Next time, a little bit more. I don't know. Do you want it?
No, this will fit better with what we have tomorrow. So I'll wait.
Okay.
Yeah. Chai, thank you.
I make like a play word. I would say commune unity. Like a common unity, right?
Yeah. Okay, thank you all so much for joining, participating. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow, same time, same place.